My boyfriend ditched me at the airport for his friend's wife. What happened next changed everything. I, 28, had been away on a week-long work trip in Boston, my first major presentation as a marketing manager for our firm. The whole time I was there, between intense meetings and networking events, I kept thinking about coming home to Alex, 30, my boyfriend of 2 years. We had moved in together just 6 months ago, and this was the longest we'd been apart since then. The trip itself had been exhausting. My boss had thrown me into the deep end, having me lead presentations for potential clients who could dramatically expand our East Coast presence. Each night, I'd collapse into my hotel bed, missing the comfort of our apartment and our usual routine of watching terrible reality TV shows while sharing takeout. Alex and I had talked about my return several times during my daily check-in calls. "I can't wait to see you," he'd said earlier in the week. "I'll be there at baggage claim," holding up one of those cheesy signs like in the movies. It made me smile, thinking about how he could still be playful even after 2 years together. We had specifically arranged that he would pick me up when I landed. It wasn't just a casual agreement, but something we'd actually planned, considering my flight was scheduled to arrive at 11:30 a.m. on a Saturday when he'd be free. The night before my flight, I texted him my flight details again, just to be sure. Flight A287, landing at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow. "Can't wait to see you." He'd replied with a simple thumbs up which, in retrospect, should have been my first clue that something was off. Alex was usually more expressive in his texts, especially when we'd been apart. The morning of my flight, I was already seated on the plane when my phone buzzed. I expected it to be Alex confirming he was heading to the airport. Instead, what I saw made my stomach drop. "Hey, can't make it to pick you up. Have to help John's wife get home from gym. She needs a ride." I stared at the message, certain I was misreading it. John was Alex's college friend who lived across town, and his wife, Michelle, was someone I'd met maybe twice at group gatherings. They'd moved to our city about 8 months ago, and while Alex and John had quickly fallen back into their old friendship, I barely knew Michelle beyond basic pleasantries. I typed back quickly, my fingers shaking slightly with disbelief. "You're joking, right? I've been away for a week, my suitcase is heavy with all the presentation materials, and I'm exhausted. Are you seriously bailing on me for a friend's wife's gym ride?" The flight attendant was making her final rounds, reminding everyone to switch to airplane mode, when his response came through, "Sarah, come on." I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. Before I could respond, another message popped up: "I have to help my friend. Not everything in the world is about you." I had to switch my phone off then, which was probably for the best because I was torn between crying and typing out a very strongly worded response. The entire 6-hour flight became an exercise in overthinking. What kind of emergency gym session requires a specific person to provide transportation? Why couldn't John pick up his own wife? Why couldn't Michelle use a rideshare app like every other person in the 21st century? During my layover in Chicago, I tried calling Alex, but it went straight to voicemail. I left what I hoped was a calm message: "Hey, I'm really confused about what's going on. Could you please explain why this couldn't wait or why someone else couldn't help Michelle? Call me back when you can." He didn't call back. Instead, I got another text: "You're being ridiculous. John asked for a favor, and friends help each other out. You can handle getting home on your own for once." For once. I'd been handling things on my own all week, networking with strangers, giving presentations to rooms full of skeptical executives, and managing my anxiety about the whole situation. The least I'd expected was for my boyfriend to be there when I got back. The second flight felt even longer than the first. The businessman sitting next to me must have noticed my mood because he kept glancing at me nervously, especially when I aggressively highlighted sections of my presentation notes just to have something to do with my hands. Landing at our local airport, I felt a mix of exhaustion and resignation. The baggage claim area was crowded with people greeting their loved ones, families hugging, couples kissing, friends laughing together. And there I was, alone, waiting for my oversized suitcase that contained not just clothes but heavy binders full of presentation materials and product samples. I spotted my bag on the carousel and tried to lift it off, but it was even heavier than I remembered. A kind elderly man helped me get it onto a cart, giving me a sympathetic smile that nearly made me tear up. I waited in the taxi line for 20 minutes, watching happy reunions continue to play out around me. The taxi driver was chatty, asking about my trip and if someone was waiting for me at home. I gave noncommittal answers, not wanting to get into the whole story with a stranger. When he helped me get my suitcase out of the trunk at our apartment building, he actually patted my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, whatever it is, it will get better." Was I that obviously upset? Our apartment was empty when I arrived. I'd half hoped Alex would at least be there, maybe with flowers or an apology, but no such luck. I dragged my suitcase up to our third-floor walk-up by myself, having to stop twice to catch my breath. By the time I got inside, I was sweaty, frustrated, and fighting back tears. I took a shower, trying to wash away the travel grime and my disappointment. As I was changing into comfortable clothes, I heard the front door open. Alex walked in as if it were any other Saturday afternoon, carrying takeout from our favorite Thai place. "Hey, babe. How was your flight?" he asked casually, setting the food on our kitchen counter. He started unpacking the containers like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just completely dismissed my feelings and abandoned me at the airport. I stood there in disbelief, my wet hair dripping onto my shoulders. "Are you serious right now?" He looked up, seeming genuinely confused. "What? You're really going to act like nothing happened? Like you didn't blow me off at the airport to give Michelle a ride home from the gym?" Alex sighed, that exasperated sound he makes when he thinks I'm being unreasonable. "It wasn't a big deal, Sarah. John called me in a panic because his car wouldn't start, and Michelle was stranded at the gym. What was I supposed to do, say no?" "Yes," I exclaimed. "You could have said no. Or you could have helped them after picking me up from the airport. Or suggested they call a taxi, or Uber, or any other solution that didn't involve abandoning your girlfriend at the airport after a week-long business trip." "It was just one ride," he said, now arranging the takeout containers with unnecessary precision. "I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this. You're a strong, independent woman. Since when do you need me to carry your bags?" I felt like I'd been slapped. "This isn't about carrying bags, Alex. This is about you making plans with me and then breaking them for a non-emergency. This is about you prioritizing a casual favor for your friend's wife over a commitment to your girlfriend." "Oh, so now I'm not allowed to help my friends?" He crossed his arms, adopting that defensive stance I'd seen too many times lately. "John's been my friend since college. When he asks for help, I help. That's what friends do." "Friends also communicate," I countered. "Did you even ask why Michelle couldn't use a ride-share app? Or why John couldn't figure out another solution? Did you even try to find a way to do both?" "Sarah, come on. You're being dramatic about this whole thing. I got you your favorite pad thai," he gestured to the food as if that solved everything. "Can we just move past this?" I felt tears welling up in my eyes again, but this time from frustration rather than hurt. "You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about the ride itself. It's about respect. It's about keeping your commitments. It's about making me feel like I matter to you." "Of course you matter to me." Alex threw his hands up. "But you can't expect to be my only priority all the time. That's not healthy." "I don't expect to be your only priority," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I do expect to be a priority, especially when we've made specific plans. Especially when I'm coming back from a challenging work trip and was looking forward to seeing you." Alex started to respond, but his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I saw his expression change. "John's asking if we want to come over for dinner tonight. Michelle's making her famous lasagna." The casual way he said it, as if we weren't in the middle of an important conversation, made something click in my mind. I realized this wasn't just about today. This was about a pattern I'd been trying not to see. "Did you tell them why you were picking Michelle up? That you were supposed to be getting your girlfriend from the airport?" Alex shifted uncomfortably. "It didn't come up." "It didn't come up," I repeated slowly. "Just like it didn't come up 2 weeks ago when you missed our dinner reservation because John needed help moving his new TV. Or last month when you canceled our weekend plans because John was going through a rough patch at work and needed a drinking buddy." "That's different," Alex protested. "John was really struggling with that project." "And what about me? I interrupted. I was struggling all week with this presentation. I told you how nervous I was, how much pressure I was under. I told you how much I was looking forward to seeing you today. You handled it fine though, didn't you? He gestured vaguely at me. You're here, you're safe, everything worked out. I walked to our bedroom, pulled out my phone, and opened my group chat with my friends. Earlier, when I'd texted them about what happened, their responses had been divided. Lisa had said I was overreacting, that relationships are about compromise. But Megan and Rachel had been outraged on my behalf. You know what's funny? I said, coming back to the kitchen. When I told my friends about this, some of them said I should give you the benefit of the doubt. That maybe there was more to the story, or maybe you had a good reason. But standing here now, listening to you dismiss my feelings instead of even trying to understand why I'm hurt, I don't think I want to give you the benefit of the doubt anymore. Alex's phone buzzed again. This time, he didn't check it. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired, Alex. I'm tired of feeling like I'm competing with John and Michelle for your attention. I'm tired of having my feelings dismissed as dramatic or ridiculous. I'm tired of making plans with you and never knowing if you'll actually follow through. You're being unfair, he said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. John and Michelle are important to me. They're like family. And what am I? I asked quietly. Where do I fit in your hierarchy of important people? He didn't answer immediately, which was an answer in itself. I think I need some space, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. I'm going to stay with Rachel for a few days. Sarah, don't be ridiculous. You just got back. Alex finally seemed alarmed. Look, I'm sorry about the airport, okay? I should have picked you up. Can we just eat dinner and talk about this later? I went back to our bedroom and pulled out the overnight bag I'd just unpacked. We can talk later, but right now, I need some time to think. And honestly, you need some time to think too. About what kind of relationship you want, and whether you're actually ready to be someone's partner. This is absurd, Alex followed me around as I packed some clothes and toiletries. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. It was one ride. No, Alex. It wasn't just one ride. It was one more example of how you treat our relationship like it's optional. Like my feelings are inconvenient. Like I'm asking too much by expecting you to keep your word. My phone buzzed, Rachel responding to my SOS text with doors open whenever you need it, honey. I felt a rush of gratitude for having friends who understood. What am I supposed to tell John and Michelle? Alex asked as I headed for the door. I turned to look at him one last time, struck by how telling it was that this was his concern. Tell them whatever you want. Or don't tell them anything. But maybe ask yourself why their opinion matters more to you than your girlfriend's feelings. I closed the door behind me, waiting until I was in the elevator before letting myself cry. My phone buzzed again, another text from Alex, you're being childish. Come back upstairs and let's talk about this like adults. I didn't respond. Instead, I ordered a ride-share to Rachel's place, appreciating the irony that it was exactly what Michelle could have done earlier today. As I sat in the back of the car, watching the city pass by through tear-blurred eyes, my phone kept lighting up with messages from Alex. Each one seemed to miss the point more than the last. The food's getting cold. John says we're being silly. Michelle feels terrible, even though she shouldn't have to. I can't believe you're doing this to us. That last one, doing this to us, really drove home how differently we saw this situation. In his mind, I was the one causing problems. I was the one being unreasonable. I was the one damaging our relationship. Rachel was waiting at her door when I arrived, taking one look at my face before pulling me into a hug. Oh honey, she said, let's get you some wine and you can tell me everything. As I sat on her couch, clutching a glass of red wine and trying to make sense of the day, I couldn't help but think about how this morning, my biggest concern had been whether my presentation materials had made my suitcase too heavy. Now, that suitcase was sitting in Alex's apartment, and I was questioning everything about our relationship. My phone buzzed one more time. It was Alex again. When you're done being dramatic, the pad thai will be in the fridge. I turned off my phone and took a long sip of wine. Rachel squeezed my hand and said, "You know, sometimes the heaviest baggage isn't the kind you can leave at the airport." I managed a weak laugh, but she was right. As I settled into her guest room that night, I realized that maybe this wasn't just about an airport pickup or a gym ride or even about John and Michelle. Maybe it was about finally acknowledging that the relationship I thought I had wasn't the relationship I actually had. That night, lying in Rachel's guest bed, I thought about all the times I'd made excuses for Alex's behavior, all the times I'd convinced myself I was being too demanding or too sensitive. I thought about how I'd imagined our airport reunion would go, and how different the reality had been. But mostly, I thought about how strange it was that it took something as simple as a missed airport pickup to make me see what had probably been true for a long time. Sometimes the best gauge of how much someone values you isn't in the big moments or grand gestures, but in the simple acts of showing up when they say they will. And sometimes, the hardest baggage to carry isn't the kind that needs a cart at the airport, it's the weight of realizing that the person you love might not love you in quite the same way. I fell asleep wondering if Alex was still at the apartment, or if he'd gone to John and Michelle's for lasagna after all. And for the first time since we'd moved in together, I realized I didn't actually care what the answer was.